Winds of Closure. Part 1. The Weight of Goodbye. It had been almost 3 months since I last saw Emily. 3 months since our lives drifted apart, each of us heading down paths I had never imagined. Emily had moved on, found someone else, and I had been left shattered. She didn't love me anymore, or maybe she never truly did, at least not in the way I had loved her. She wanted something different, something I couldn't give. I wasn't going to beg for her to choose me. Not anymore. If Emily wanted to leave, I had no choice but to let her go. So, I packed up my belongings and left the city we once called home, not knowing where I was going or if I'd ever feel whole again. Broken and lost, I moved in with my older sister, Natalie, and her wife, Jenna. The days that followed blurred into each other. I slept on the floor of their spare room, drowning in silence and darkness. The world felt too bright, too loud, and I was too tired to keep pretending I was okay. I cried until there were no more tears, my cheeks swollen and red. How had I become so disposable? I kept asking myself, over and over, how someone who once swore she loved me could let me go so easily. I was still working at the hospital, my only routine left, but it felt like a joke. I was supposed to be taking care of others, offering them comfort and healing when I could barely care for myself. Each shift felt like an eternity, the weight of my own heartbreak crushing me. 40 pounds melted off my frame without me even noticing, until one day I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the reflection staring back. Then on October 26th, something changed. I had just pulled into Natalie's driveway when my phone buzzed. My heart dropped into my stomach as I saw Emily's name on the screen. I couldn't breathe for a moment, couldn't believe she was reaching out now, after everything. Her name triggered a flood of memories. The way she used to look at me, the late nights we spent laughing, the promises we once made. My hands shook as I opened the message, my chest tightening. "I'm sorry." 2 words, and suddenly I was back in that old pain, the rawness of it all rushing to the surface. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the screen, torn between curiosity and self-preservation. What could she possibly want now? Finally, I read the rest of her message. "I know I didn't deserve the way you loved me. I just wanted you to know that I did love you. I was lost, and I let my own mess destroy what we had. You were the best part of my life, and I ruined it. I'm sorry, and I hope you're taking care of yourself. I feel like my life is falling apart." My heart pounded in my chest as I read her words over and over again. Was she reaching out because she regretted leaving? Did she want me back? Or was this just guilt eating away at her? I didn't know what to think, and I wasn't sure I even wanted to know. That night, I didn't reply. Instead, I called my best friend, Mia, who had been there through all of it. The breakup, the heartache, the long nights spent crying on her couch. I needed her calm, rational perspective, something I couldn't find within myself. The next day, I sent Emily a short text back. I didn't forgive her, but I didn't shut her out either. I wasn't ready to be harsh, even though part of me wanted to be. We exchanged a few messages, light and casual, both of us avoiding the elephant in the room. She seemed sad, lost, and I could sense that the person she left me for hadn't brought her the happiness she'd hoped for. A day later, she told me she was moving back to town, staying with her younger sister until she figured things out. It felt surreal, like the universe was bringing her back into my orbit, though I didn't know if that was a good thing or not. I could feel her desperation, her need for comfort, but I didn't ask too many questions. Still, The question burned inside me. What did this mean for us? Was she coming back to me, or was this just another chapter in a story that needed to end? When Emily arrived, she messaged me, asking if we could meet. She had some excuse about returning something I had left behind, but I knew it was just a reason to see me. We agreed to meet at the park by the river, where we'd spent so many nights together, laughing and talking until the sun came up. It was our place. As I walked along the familiar path, my heart pounded in my chest. The leaves were turning golden, the air crisp with the scent of autumn, but none of that mattered. I was about to see her again, and I wasn't sure if I could handle it. Then I saw her, Emily, standing by the bench where we used to sit. She looked different, thinner, more fragile, but her face was the same. My pulse quickened, a mix of anxiety and something else, something I wasn't ready to name. She handed me the small item, barely meeting my eyes, and for a moment, the silence between us felt heavier than all the words we weren't saying. We started walking just like we used to. Our conversation was light at first, but soon the real truth came out. She told me how unhappy she'd been, how the woman she'd left me for hadn't changed, how she felt trapped in the same cycle of toxicity and regret. She admitted she still had feelings for me, but she was confused. She didn't know if she should go back to her ex or try to move forward. Her honesty was painful, but I appreciated it. For the first time in months, it felt like she was being real with me. But it hurt, knowing she was still torn between me and someone else, between the life we once had and the one she thought she wanted. "I don't want to lose you," Emily said, her voice breaking as she wrapped her arms around me. The embrace felt so familiar, so comforting, and for a moment, I let myself sink into it. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and I didn't bother wiping them away. "If you go back to her, if you keep going down that road, I can't be a part of your life anymore," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I love you, Emily, but I can't keep watching you hurt yourself. And I can't keep letting it hurt me." Her arms tightened around me, and for a second, I thought she might say something that would change everything. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw the truth. She wasn't ready to let go of the past, and I couldn't keep waiting for her to figure it out. Our kiss was soft, lingering, a goodbye wrapped in the familiarity of old love. "Take care of yourself," I whispered, pulling away, the tears blurring my vision. I turned and walked away, my heart breaking all over again. But this time, I knew I would heal. Part 1 end. For days after that meeting, I felt like I was walking through fog. Emily's presence still lingered in my mind, her words, her touch, the bittersweet kiss that felt like a final goodbye. I went through the motions of life, but nothing felt real. I kept replaying the moment in my head, trying to figure out if I could have said or done something different. If I could have fought harder for her, or if it was really time to let go. Mia, as always, was my rock. She came over with takeout and wine, listening to me talk in circles about everything. She didn't tell me what to do, didn't offer unsolicited advice. She just let me be, which was exactly what I needed. "She's torn, Ellie," Mia said one night as we sat on the floor of my bedroom, a half-empty bottle of wine between us. "But you've been living in that space for too long. I know you love her, but you also have to love yourself enough to stop waiting for her to choose you." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks, even though I already knew she was right. I had been holding on to hope, believing that one day Emily would come back and everything would magically fall into place. But people weren't puzzles, and sometimes love wasn't enough to make things work. Over the next few weeks, I forced myself to focus on my own healing. I started going to therapy again, something I had neglected after the breakup, thinking I could handle it all on my own. My therapist, Grace, was a kind woman in her 50s with a gentle smile and a way of making me feel seen, even when I didn't want to be. "You're grieving," she said during one of our sessions. "Not just the relationship, but the future you had imagined with her. It's okay to mourn that loss. But at some point, you have to give yourself permission to move forward." Moving forward seemed impossible at first. I couldn't imagine a life without Emily, even though she hadn't been part of it for months. But I took small steps. I started working out again, not to lose weight, but to feel strong in my body. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with, went out to brunches, and even let Mia drag me to a queer bar downtown one night. At first, the idea of being around other lesbians felt strange, like I was betraying the love I still had for Emily. But as the night went on, I started to loosen up, dancing with Mia and laughing with a group of women who were unapologetically themselves. It was a reminder that I could still have fun, that life could still be beautiful, even without Emily in it. It wasn't until a month later, though, that I felt like I was really starting to heal. I was sitting at a coffee shop, reading a book and minding my own business, when a woman approached me. She had short, curly hair and a warm smile, the kind that immediately put me at ease. "Hey, sorry to bother you, but is this seat taken?" she asked, gesturing to the chair across from me. I looked around the busy cafe, realizing there weren't many open seats left. "No, go ahead," I said, offering her a small smile. She sat down and introduced herself as Kat. We talked for a bit, small talk about the book I was reading, the terrible weather, how crowded the cafe was. She was easy to talk to, and I found myself enjoying the conversation more than I had expected. As we chatted, something shifted inside me. It wasn't that I was suddenly over Emily, far from it, but for the first time in a long time, I felt the faint stirrings of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I could find happiness again, even if it didn't look the way I thought it would. Kat and I exchanged numbers before she left, and though I wasn't ready to dive into anything serious, it felt good to know that there were people out there who might see me, who might appreciate me for who I was. It felt good to be reminded that love didn't end with Emily. Part 3. Love Redefined. The weeks rolled by, and I found myself thinking about Emily less and less. Every now and then, she'd pop into my mind, a song we used to listen to, a place we used to go, but the pain wasn't as sharp anymore. I still cared about her, still wanted the best for her, but I wasn't waiting for her to come back. One afternoon, I got a text from Emily. "I've been thinking about you. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a while, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to jump at the chance to reconnect, to hear what she had to say. But the other part of me, the part that had been working so hard to heal, was hesitant. I wasn't the same person I had been 3 months ago, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to open that door again. After a lot of thought, I decided to meet with her. Not because I wanted to rekindle anything, but because I needed closure. I needed to know, once and for all, where we stood. We met at a cafe, much like the one where I had met Kat. When I saw Emily, my heart did a little flip, but it wasn't the same. She looked tired, worn out in a way that made me sad for her. We sat down, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "I've been thinking about us a lot," she finally said, her voice soft. "About everything that happened. I know I hurt you, Ellie, and I'll never forgive myself for that." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I thought I knew what I wanted," she went on, "but I was wrong, and by the time I realized that, it was too late." You had already moved on. There it was, the confession I had been waiting for. But instead of feeling vindicated, I just felt tired. I had spent so much time wanting to hear these words, but now that they were here, they didn't change anything. I had moved on at least as much as I could, and I wasn't going to let myself fall back into the same cycle of pain. I appreciate you saying that, I said, my voice steady. But I can't go back, Emily. I've spent the last few months trying to put myself back together, and I can't undo that now. I still care about you, but we're not the same people we were. She looked down, her hands trembling slightly as she fidgeted with her coffee cup. I understand, she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We sat in silence for a few moments, and then, slowly, the conversation turned lighter. We talked about our lives, where we were now, and for the first time, it felt like we were really letting each other go. There was no anger, no bitterness, just a quiet understanding that our time had passed. As we stood up to leave, Emily pulled me into a hug. It wasn't the kind of hug that begged for something more. It was a hug of release, of finality. "Take care of yourself," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You too," I replied, smiling through the tears that threatened to fall. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. The door between us had finally closed, but I wasn't left standing in the dark anymore. I was walking towards something new, something brighter, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. Part 4: New Beginnings. In the weeks that followed, I found myself thinking more about Kat. We'd been texting casually since we met at the cafe, and I had to admit, there was something about her that intrigued me. She was kind, funny, and incredibly down-to-earth. She didn't push for anything more than I was ready to give, but the connection between us was undeniable. One evening, she invited me out to dinner, and for the first time in months, I said yes, without hesitation. We met at a cozy little restaurant downtown, and from the moment I saw her, I felt at ease. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. As we laughed and talked, I realized something. I wasn't broken anymore. I had been through the fire, and while the scars were still there, they didn't hurt as much. I had survived, and now I was ready to open myself up to the possibility of love again. Not with the same desperation I had felt with Emily, but with the quiet confidence that I deserved to be loved fully, without hesitation. After dinner, Kat walked me to my car, and as we stood there, the night air cool against our skin, she smiled. "I'm really glad we met," she said softly, her eyes warm and sincere. "Me too," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to go wrong. I didn't feel like I had to hold on to the past or protect myself from future heartache. I was just present.
And that was enough.
As I drove home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what might come next. I was ready.